The love and passion in video games is still there, believe it or not. A very common opinion is that modern gaming sucks, and where modern gaming does suck in some areas, it most definitely isn't bad overall. In fact, with the amount of great games that came out last year and the lineup for this year, I'd say that gaming has never been in a better position. Making a blanket statement such as modern video games suck is completely discrediting all of the work that many devs put into their games, especially after a plethora of amazing games that came out very recently. I agree that there are a few bad apples, but that doesn't mean that modern video gaming in general sucks. I think that's absolutely ludicrous. One of the points people tend to bring up as to why modern gaming sucks is handholding. Most games nowadays have a way of telling the player what to do or where to go, which is perfectly fine. In a linear experience, I think that there is less need for objective markers and objectives in general, considering the levels should be structured in a way that allows a player to know what they are doing at all times, opposed to being shown through some form of marker. However, they still are a useful feature in a game. Objectives allow a game to be accessible to all people, so if you're new to video games, you know exactly what you're doing and where you need to go. If you get lost in a game, it can quickly turn from a challenge into an annoyance, and this type of experience is increased tenfold to newcomers to video games. So the removal of markers, objectives, and other hand holders simply wouldn't add anything to a linear game. It would only take away and make for a less streamlined experience. Plus, games aren't designed how old games were. Opposed to being a large isolated level with many different ways of traversing it, games favor either a cinematic linear experience or an open world, and you can't really take away the markers in an open world game. Although I do agree that some open world experiences do have slightly too many markers on the map. An example of this is Assassin's Creed Origins, in which even each and every treasure chest is marked on the map. The answer to fixing this icon clutter isn't to get rid of markers completely, but to rework them. Remove the ones that don't necessarily need to be on the map, but keep the more important ones that tell players important information or that let them know where the next mission is. Simply removing markers and other hand-holding features that are supposedly ruining video games isn't the answer to adding emphasis on exploration or creating a challenge. It's just unhelpful. Games are designed in a way more complex way nowadays than they were, say, 20 years ago. Levels are larger and more detailed with less obvious pathways. Open worlds are bigger than ever before with more content than ever before, and developers can't simply remove features that make their games more streamlined. The only point I can agree with though is the sheer amount of markers in open world games. That needs to be toned down. Let players explore a little, let them find chests themselves, or let them find high level enemies themselves. Don't have it on the map for people to simply click on and run over to. It makes the game feel like a checklist opposed to an experience with things to discover and secrets to find. Other than that though, I have no problem when it comes to markers and objectives, especially when it comes to linear games. Sometimes they're needed, and they make gaming accessible to people that are new. Don't get me wrong, I appreciate an experience that doesn't tell me what to do, but sometimes it makes for a more streamlined game, and there are other ways to incorporate challenge into a game opposed to letting a player get lost in a level. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about this, but one of the main things people criticize modern gaming for is the heavy emphasis on monetization. Now, I know there have been certain games out there that do focus very heavily on monetization, which isn't okay, but that doesn't mean the whole of the modern gaming industry is like this. There are many games that offer free updates or games that don't have microtransactions at all. Games like Warframe, Horizon Zero Dawn, GTA Online, and The Witcher 3 all handle monetization well, bearing in mind that GTA is the fourth best-selling game of all time and is at the front of the AAA industry. Yet it still manages to release free updates for players and keeps microtransactions to a minimum, besides shark cards of course. Warframe is also a great example of how to monetize a game. I know it's free to play, but it's done incredibly well. Free regular huge updates for the game, tons of content and fun to be had, with a full in-game trading system that allows players to trade with one another to get currency. Being free to play, it could have easily been filled with microtransactions and paid DLC, but it isn't. It does have microtransactions, but the game is by no means pay to win, and most players play the game for hundreds of hours and don't buy a single microtransaction, and this doesn't put them at a disadvantage either. Fair enough, the huge titans of the video game industry are monetizing their games to shit, which isn't good at all. However, there are still so many games that don't include microtransactions, season passes, and loot boxes, and I think it's unfair to say that all modern gaming sucks, because I think that it discredits the developers that do put a lot of work into their games and don't monetize their games heavily. We should be supporting these developers opposed to making blanket statements such as all modern video games suck. People look at franchises like Call of Duty, Assassin's Creed, Battlefield, and most AAA titans and immediately like to point out the lack of innovation in modern gaming, which is a mistake that can be easily made. When you see all of these huge developers releasing rehash after rehash, you really start to feel the fatigue set in. However, it's just because of the sheer amount of advertising of all of these tired franchises that people seem to think that the whole industry is like this. That's just simply wrong. Look at games like Horizon Zero Dawn, a game that brought a whole new meaning to storytelling in open world games, or the most recent Dark Souls games that allowed people to see what a true challenge was, or Uncharted that made us develop a relationship with characters in a way that wasn't thought possible. Modern gaming is a beautiful thing, and there are developers that constantly innovate and improve, but they just aren't at the forefront of the industry like they deserve to be. There are plenty of games that brought us emotionally charged experiences, games that had the most intense moments, or even games that allowed us to kick back and watch a story unfold, opposed to being filled with action. 2017 was a year that had many innovative games such as Little Nightmares, Hollow Knight, Hellblade, and Cuphead, just to name a few. And 2018 I'm sure will have many of the same innovation in terms of storytelling, atmosphere, strategy, or challenge. You need to remember that the gaming industry is one of the most diverse media empires of them all, and that there are tons of hidden gems that are waiting to be discovered. The big games are nice, and there are plenty of great experiences to be had in the huge AAA games. However, I truly believe that the best experiences come from smaller developers that have a much smaller reach, because most of the time they innovate the most and give us the experiences that really stick with us. So when people think innovation is dead, look to the games I mentioned earlier in this video, but most importantly, look to the future and keep an eye open for smaller games that have the potential to shift the foundations of the industry. One of the main reasons people think modern video games suck is because of the AAA industry. The titans of the video game industry we've already established monetize their games heavily and seem to have a severe lack of innovation. But these are the developers that are at the forefront of the industry and are advertised the most and are in charge of the biggest games. I'd say that the reason modern gaming has such a bad name because the biggest contenders in the industry are exploiting video games solely for a higher profit, which means that those who represent modern video games are choosing to give it a bad name. There are actually so many talented developers out there that could represent the industry, but instead we get EA, Activision, Ubisoft, and so many more that are at the forefront of video games, ruining its name one release at a time. Anyway, that is the end of today's video. I wanted to make a video defending modern gaming because a lot of people have been making videos and articles talking about how modern video games suck in general. I think that's an incredibly ignorant blanket statement to be throwing around. Modern gaming definitely doesn't suck, and as I said at the beginning of the video, I genuinely think that gaming's never been in a better position. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments section below and drop a like if you enjoyed the video. Be sure to go and check out my other videos if you enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.